too exhausted, I needed the energy, needed to pick me up. I'm in your movie, but this is my cinema. I got a power, I'm built to devour. Anyone coming against me a tower. I don't care in the pressure. Some of y'all leaving here in the stretcher. Took my time to go and get better. I was reading in the red letters. Ay. Energy, energy, energy. I need that energy, energy. Energy, energy, energy. I need that. Been here, done that. Wanna know what we came for? Been here, done that. Wanna know what we came for? Energy, energy, energy. I need that energy, energy. Energy, energy, energy. I need that energy, energy.
I feel about this. I mean, little as you know, there are a lot of teams up here. Yeah, you may need the brick, but is it worth it? Now you're entering into the fray here. Still, turns out to be a net positive for the time being. Continuing to invest in, and we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, right above them, ending to
builds.
a couple players. A lot going on here. This is the risk you take, though, right?
Guess this is just what happens when you have like 4 different teams duking it out over at Rift Island. But the development of this situation here at the top of Rift Island, MDF, a lot of it's really just going to depend. Asian Jeff and Oliver OG, they actually have a pretty good opportunity here if they want to try and essentially control the launch pads. Might be some teams hanging out on this Rift Island that could be looking for an easy rotate out, but Oliver OG and Asian Jeff are going to continue to move a little bit more central. Amazingly enough, the capture point also not yet been claimed.
Yeah, that's actually the bigger surprise right now. I thought it would have been claimed by Havoc above there for a second, but that fight really set them back, and they didn't even think about going for it. So well, there you have it. To all of our surprise, Asian Jeff and Oliver OG, and they're somehow miraculously walking out of here with even a better situation. More brick, clearly control of the launch pad now, and the entire cache. So GG's for them.
Last one's up, but the first to prosper, seemingly enough. They're at the Rift Island. And another mild success story here for Chubbs and Bryce. So, reboot van clearly was a successful rescue mission. Question now, though, is how much time did that really eat into Chubbs and Bryce's strategy here? Because you obviously want to try and get ideal positioning for some of these mid-game zones, but instead, Chubbs and Bryce set so far back, having to go for that reboot van instead, so could be in some serious need for surge tag damage.
Yeah, and you could tell that I think this is definitely the case when they're pretty far removed from the zone right now, and they're willing to kind of stake out that duo that's in front of them, hoping that they likely grapple blade out first and catch some tags while they rotate. Back on over to the Rift Island area. And things are pretty quiet for the time being, so everyone here is more or less settled in a groove and in the zone. Not much for Tahi and Scented to get involved with here, though. I'm not sure if the play is going to be that they're just going to have to go up this island here shortly.
Whether they like it or not, they're likely going to have to get active pretty soon here, MDF,
Yep.
because only 78 above that damage threshold. They do have options, though. Given the amount of shots being fired still at the top of Rift Island, that could be what Scented and Tahi are actually opting to wait for. And checking back in with Bryce and Chubbs. Encrypted Ducky, just one layer above now. Encrypted, exposed entirely. Bryce gonna instantly look to try and turn him into mincemeat, but instead it's gonna be Ducky with the follow-up backup. No, Chubbs one more time watches as Bryce gets full E-limbed. But this is still a fight that Chubbs is willing to take. Managed to secure at least 1-2 shield potions, so could get his shields back to full, but keep in mind, 2-tick zone. It's gonna chip away at both of these teams so rapidly. Chubbs knows he's got at least a med kit that he could work with here, but at the same time, losing Bryce, that was the last intention this duo had in mind.
Yeah, I just don't know how Bryce doesn't finish that right there. He had everything that he needed starting to stack in his favor. Encrypted makes a mistake, cones him in, perfectly trapped, hits the big tag. And then it's like he just forgot to follow up. I think, yeah, things just suddenly flipped upside down, and Ducky comes in with an incredible save, which I didn't see coming at all.
Might have been a pretty big save for Ducky in terms of making sure that Encrypted stays standing here. Asian Jeff, Oliver OG, though, we saw them at top of Rift Island. We heard there was definitely plenty of action bumping in place. Havoc quickly toasted by Asian Jeff. And Asian Jeff, he's not done just yet. And a Malabuka.
Dang.
I don't think Malabuka would be moving like this now. Asian Jeff coming out on top. 2 eliminations, 8 beautiful points added to the tally. And given that they were, what, 17th heading into game number 2, that's a massive opportunity for them to siege advantage of.
It's actually insane. I'm really against them going up to the Rift Island because the risk involved, but it turned out to be the best decision, the best move for them. Set of eliminations. Now they're above the surge here. They have some room to work with. Max material, upgraded, you know, mythical loadouts, legendary loadouts. Like, they just set themselves up for what could be a huge game right here. Now they just have to stay grounded, essentially. Look at this zone. The zone's gonna pull wickedly to the west right now.
Nah, these zones actually hate the players. I've never been more convinced.
This is a rough one.
The water zone, this far west pool zone, practically gonna force a lot of these teams to honestly have to traverse back over the water in the first place. But yeah, definitely a vicious cycle so far today with some of these zone pools, but good crash pad, good flowberry usage out of Tahi and Scented. They're gonna opt to drop to the low ground as well. Just wanna try and keep themselves as eyes off as possible from the rest of the lobby.
It's actually a great rotate. Well timed, nice and early. Let's jump in with Chubb solo. Gets the first tag onto Hydra, gets the finish as the teammate bails on Hydra. Red's just like, yo, bro, I don't know what just happened, but I'm good. Where you at? And he left him in the box. Chubbs finds a good set of points here. This is all that matters, is that it's not for nothing this game, right? Like, earn what you can so that you can come in here in the last game and get that top 15. And so far, he's doing it.
The only thing Chubbs is really hurting for right now is just a little bit of white heals. If you can find even bandages at this point. Higher gonna be the initial focus, but it was just Chubbs putting some spray down. Now he's gonna offer the rotate instead. As a solo, wants to do his best to try and stay ahead of these zones, but gotta be careful because you don't want to find yourself getting picked off in the process. And with the last of his Flowberry Fizz coming out, Chubbs, it's going to be quite the endeavor for him from this position.
This is actually a good terrain for a solo to be in right now. Works out really well. It's a nice, easy slope. Not too steep, not too crazy, but a lot of protection, a lot of cover to work around as well. So I think we're going to be able to see someone like Bryce pull pretty far right now. For Chubbs there. Dago plays in G Money, setting themselves up for success now. Little elimination set there, brings them on up to 3. Not quite rewarded with a ton of material, but still something to gain nonetheless for Macwood and Blake. They're at the far side of the zone, but they do have a grapple blade to work with. 5 Elans right now, so really turning online right now in this game, and here goes it. End up buffing themselves up for the time being, and blading on out to the side here.
Actually going to be one of the first few teams in the lobby to touch down inside of this next zone. But again, Blake, Macwood, fully understanding they have a lot of ground to cover. Blizzard just doing his best magic hack, just a full-on appearance. Pulling a rabbit out of the hat, except it was Blizzard inside of Macwood and Blake's box. Nearly took out Blake in the process too, so Good awareness from Macwood to back up his duo. And like I was mentioning, these two fully aware after how their last game shaped up. They've got to go big in this lobby if they want to feel a little bit more comfortable with how that final match will play out. And 60 limbs, definitely a good spot to be in.
Not again. Not another team basing out this early before the zone even starts to move. Well, we saw what happened last game. I mean, this is what happens when, you know, you get to day 3, right? Lower bracket, like all the plays are coming out. Well, we'll see what happens though. Ultimately, Shadow and Walkers are, or can be considered amongst some of the more experienced players in these lobbies right now. Tahi down here by himself, 123 damage below the surge. Things are looking pretty dire here in the low ground. Chubbs barely holding on to his game as well. So we talked about it, gave the second, and new high ground. Folks up top, Shadows down. I mean, I could have said, you know, I told you so, but you know, whatever. It's all good.
Sometimes it's just not even necessary. But only time will tell if another team chooses to try and skybase in the 8th zone.
I just don't know why. It's just so...
Just look at how far up they made it, though. They really took this to some height. And now Macwood Blake easily gonna fall back here, just completely perched at their elevated thrones right now. How long can they hold those? Another question entirely. Chubbs doing his best. Actually gonna commit with a grapple towards front side low. Not as much congestion have been built up here since Chubbs got out ahead of everybody else. Might have an opportunity even to look for another elimination. He's already picked up 3. Tahi, on the other hand, just finding himself trying to do everything he can to keep things moving forward, but down to his final 3 builds. He's got to try and hang more towards the backside of these moving zones, and Tahi breaks in, trying to attempt to get into Walker's box. Tahi might be able to do it, but no, not good enough. Walker's gonna find an elimination there instead. Chubbs now trying to hold his own.
Chubbs is crazy with it. Chubbs is going crazy right now. So not only has he been solo for the majority of this game, longer than he's been a duo, but he is continuing to find eliminations, and he just singled out another solo behind him. I hope he turns focus here and picks that one up too. He's now inside the top 10 and has 4 eliminations. This could be the defining top 15 run for him right now. He just watched a player walk by him. It's Walker's there. He's got options. He's got so many to work with. Here it is on the heels. He's got the grapple blade. One more to get into the safe zone, but no, doesn't quite find it in there. 2 HP, still alive here, still on the hunt now. What a run.
Got scared for a moment, but he was gonna put a toe just too long into the zone. Chubbs now crawling through this low ground. All these wood builds surrounding him. Chubbs, he's got to come up big with his next shot. That's if he can make sure to even stay keeping from these zone ticks. And
oh
again,
no, the hesitation. But it's almost the top 5 for him. Still good nonetheless. Oliver OG, Asian Jeff, and another big end game. We talked about it. We said that's all that they needed. The little platform that give them the boost, give them the momentum, and then make that end game, and top 15 is yours. And it looks like they have just all but done it. 72 points earned this game. They already came into this with about 20 or so points in top 17. So this is the run for Asian Jeff and Oliver OGs as they're setting themselves up for the FNCS Grand Finals appearance. Who would have thought it? Asian Jeff having quite the year already. He continues to rage on here. Oliver OG comes in the nick of time with the heals there, and Blake finds his elimination there to finish things up. Taco, I mean, this is looking great for a lot of the favorites right now.
it all depends though, because Macwood, you have to notice, he doesn't have any white heals. Oliver OG actually had 2 med kits in hand. So now it's all gonna fall down to whether or not Oliver OG can manage to secure another handful of heals. Also has to be careful he doesn't succumb to that storm sickness. But Oliver OG, you can see his last med kit, it just ran out. He's scurrying through every single one of these builds, but he can't find Sanito. Sanito clutching up in a heal off, just fully content to stay back while the zone does the rest of the work for him.
Yeah, definitely. But Oliver OG, Asian Jeff, there's still plenty of room for them to celebrate. An 80-point game for them is massive. It's surely going to set themselves up for top 15. Well played, GGs, and also shout out to King,
which should be comfortable enough for them. And yeah, look at this right now, the threshold 58 points, top 15. That is what we were looking for. But Kelly, Bryce, and Chubbs being left in contention here, only 2 points behind that threshold, and the storyline there is just insane. We saw Bryce, he was actually a solo throughout a lot of that early and mid game, ends up getting the reboot off, then he himself goes down. Chubbs is left to do it from like 8th or 7th zone, a majority of the game. He pulls it off, gets enough points to keep them in contention. That is crazy.
Yeah, I always love to see these reboot plays where it brings up the other player, and it's that player that got rebooted that actually carries on the end game there. But we're talking about giant jumps there. I'm looking at Blake and Macwood. It looked like they went up 40 placements or